things like that are all based on old urbanism. The old European towns, we all love them. They go to Italy and to France. Oh, it's nice. Look at those nice little streets. Look at those nice little spaces. We've lost it all. We've lost it all because of the traffic engineer and because of the motor car. And we got into suburbia. For 40 years we went into suburbia. And the new urbanist movement plus the Congress of New Urbanism started this thing, and we first got in touch with it in the late 90s, mid-90s, and we decided that's what we like. We're not into major big tall-story hotels, we're not into high-rise buildings, we're not into malls, we're into sensitive coastal development and sensitive residential development, and that's what we've been doing for 33 years. So the transect is basically, if you think about it, it's a very logical way of how to create a town. The T1 is a natural zone, it's the nature areas. The T2 is a rural zone where you do get some farmland in between, which is mostly in the areas around here if you go. And then you go to T3, a suburban zone. It's well laid out suburban area, not suburban, where motor car and cul-de-sacs and you regulate the parking, you regulate the design, there's a design code, the architectural guidelines, and you basically, what we do is we sell the plot, your earth, with a design code book, with an architectural guideline, where do you park, where's your frontage, what your walls and finishes look like, what your fences look like, and a design style. So that's the T3, and T4 is the smaller. You can see as we go from the natural zone to, this is downtown Cape Town. We're not getting there. We're not getting to T6, the urban core. We're not there. We do get some special districts, yes, maybe agriculture, but the furthest we go on this is T4. And if you go to downtown Stellenbosch or down, you can see the density increase. So we're looking at T3s and T4s and special zones. Our whole proposal for this was also to do a rural, a contemporary rural village. A village where you can have fiber optics. A village where there's still swales in the streets and stormwater can run, well designed, well planned. We stay away from underwater stormwater pipes and concrete pipes and drainage pits and out of sight, out of mind. You pipe the water into a river or thing and it's gone. So what we want to do and what our assumption was here, and when we start talking about this, the first thing we realized that there's no water. The Spier Lombard told us straight out, there's no water. And if you don't have water, you can't do anything. So we said, okay guys, but there's irrigation water. Let's see what we can do with that. So our assumption was, and is, and these guys will talk about it, we're going to take irrigation water, tunnel water, pipe. We're going to clean it up. We're going to run it through the town, through the village. My proposal is that Spier sells the water, like a municipality, sells the water to the village owners, captures all the water that comes out of the sewer and the wastewater, clean it up, and then use it for irrigation. So we're actually getting a double use out of the water, as landowners, as developers, and that will be our proposal. We don't want to pay contributions for pipelines and water affairs in municipalities. We'll do it ourselves. That's what we did at Crossways. We said we want to create a rural new town, a rural village. He said, you can't do that. Said, why? No, but you don't have sewer, you don't have water. So we'll do it ourselves. Oh, but then you're creating a new town. Yes. What's wrong with that? We pay our taxes, we pay rates, but we don't want to pay contribution for bulk services, water. We might with electricity. But for sewer and water, the proposal will be we don't go there. We'll do our own. So we clean the water from the irrigation, use it and sell it, which is legal, through a system of payment, just like prepaid water or whatever. It's easy. You make money out of the water, you clean it up, and out of that water, out of 100%, you'll gain back 70%, 30% gets lost through the water treatment. And then we capture rainwater. We harvest the rainwater off the roofs, we harvest the rainwater off the roads, swales, stormwater forests, put it back into nice ponds and dams, into the existing stuff which we've done. And the idea is that we harvest as much rainwater as we can in the winter, store it, and then use the shortfall for the backup irrigation. So ideally, if we can, we want to have a zero water usage through the village. We use existing Spier irrigation, clean it up, drink it, sell it, clean it up again, and use it for irrigation. So that is the assumption we made that we can do, and that's what my instruction was to these guys. And while they were busy, we then cleaned up the design much as we can. We gave them the road lengths, we gave them the road widths. Our roads are not municipal roads, they're narrow, they've got hardened shoulders, they block pavers, they can be easily done. We design labor intensively so that we can go out and say we're going to use local people to build the roads. We're not going to use big rollers and asphalt and machines, it's not necessary. So there's a whole lot of things, the street lights and all. We don't use stormwater pipes, we use swales. Drainage swales, we collect all the water, we put it in ponds, we create ponds as best as we can. And these guys will talk about it. So, and then they guys said, but what's the phasing? For the feasibility, you will need the phases. You're obviously not going to put 400 urban or streets or we're going to capture the phases. So we sort of arbitrarily done 5, 6 phases, phase 1A and B, 1C, 2, so there's 6 phases there that we can decide, and we can change it, but we have to do it in order to get to a feasibility. And normally from our experience, our assumption was 70 sales a month, right? Okay, we will go there now, but I just want to give the background. So we had broke up in phases, and we did our feasibility in phases, and we said we can sell 6 to 7 stands a month. And those were the assumptions. And I think then Rob and Chad can take it further, and to take you through the further, we had to make certain assumptions. I just want to put the background in place. So it was we're going to say, if it's going really well, we're going to sell more than 5 a month or 7 a month. But our assumption was, based on crossways and other, we sell 7 a month. That's 84 stands a year. There's 443, so it's going to take us 4 to 5 years to sell out. If it goes really well, we sell out faster. The entire thing is sales driven. If you don't sell, you don't make money. It's as simple as that. That's, you will see in the feasibility, we put a lot of money aside for marketing. We put a lot of money aside for getting the approvals, the RODs and stuff like that, but we can go through those numbers and we can interrogate them. Over to you guys.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. All right. Good morning. So for the remainder of the presentation, Rob and I will kind of walk you guys through just the feasibility study itself and the assumptions that we had to make, like Dr. Mulder mentioned. To get things off, we'll start a little bit just about the project summary, a brief overview and recap of the Spier development. After that, we'll move into the costs and the assumptions that we had to make in order to reach these numbers that you're going to see later on in the financial summary and at the end of the presentation. And then finally, we'll take a look, a brief glimpse into the actual Excel model itself and answer any questions that you guys may have and dive deep into that if that's what you guys would like to do. So to get things started, the project summary, the Spier development from the master plan you can see was 66 blocks that will produce 443 urban. You can see below there the 4 product types that the development will have. You can see 149 residential T3 units, 191 residential T4 units, and those T3 and T4 just relate back to the Transect development that Dr. Mulder talked about with the density and the design guidelines and whatnot. You have 102 mixed-use urban and 1 agricultural hub. All in all, it's a little over 220 or about 226,000 square meters, which is roughly 22 to 23 hectares.
I made an error, we can rectify it all. I actually wanted the engineers to present the water situation first, but we can go on with this and talk about the water afterwards.
Okay, so now speaking a little bit about the timeline. Again, these are just the assumptions that we made. For the purpose of this model, we started in January of 2018.
It's just a generic date.
Yeah. The main thing to look at there is that we modeled it for the 77 months, which is just a little over 6 years, about a year per phase, and then you would finish out the sales at the end of the project, and then it would come to completion. Again, that's sales driven, so like Dr. Mulder said, if it's selling out really quick, then it may not be a total of 6 years, it can be much quicker. The 6 phases would essentially proceed in the same manner. The groundbreaking for this model, in this model it does at least, the groundbreaking of construction would happen in January. The urban would be completed over about an 8-month time frame, which Rob will go further into detail about. You would start sales around the middle of the year in June, and then the The sales would proceed for 12 months and then stop or continue until they're completely sold out. But in this model, they stop as the next phase begins to start.
These are all
wrap
per
up.
phase.
Yeah, per phase.
Is the cash also through the 12 and 18
Look.
months?
So this is the phasing plan, like Dr. Mulder said. We have 6 phases for the development. This is subject to change again, depending on the final design, the market at the current time that we start developing and whatnot. But for the purpose of this, we have the 6 phases here. And essentially, each one of these phases would be developed into its own town area. And the idea is that once completed, all 6 of these phases would contribute to the overall design and development of the Spier community that you guys would be able to enjoy, the residents and the visitors that would be visiting the site.
Okay, so now that Chad's walked y'all through the basics of the program and the project summary, I'd like to speak specifically about the assumptions that we made in order to reach our conclusions. As I'm sure you all know, any feasibility study, especially the financial feasibility studies, are only as good as the information that you pour into it, the assumptions that you make. And so I'd like to start off with the first group of assumptions being the sales proceeds. Now, the income that's coming from sales of finished urban is really the only source of cash besides a working capital loan that I'll discuss later. And it's going to perform 3 functions for the project. Primarily, it's going to pay off both the principal and the interest on that working capital loan that we discussed later. After that's completed, it's going to finance both the direct construction costs as well as some of the fees and the overhead costs of running the development company. Then finally, it'll result in a net profit for the investors. The figures that you see on this slide, you can see that we've pegged monthly sales at an average of about 6 per month. That's based on historical sales data from similar projects as well as input from real estate sales professionals. So we're very confident in that data. And you can see by the end of the 6th phase, we're calling for about 360 million rands worth of income from the project, revenue from the project. So the next group of assumptions, we'll start looking at the expenses. The first group being hard costs, which are the expenses that are tied directly to the construction of the project. And so you can broadly group those into 2 categories. Construction services, such as civil engineering, electrical engineering, fiber and communications build out, things of that nature. And then a series of fees that we pay to our specialists or subject matter experts. For example, soils testing by our geotechnical engineers. That'd be a good example of specialist fee. The hard costs in general make up 78% of the project's total cost to build. And we'll talk about the remaining components after this. What you see on the slide here, and as Chad alluded to, we're calling for each phase to have the major construction complete within about 8 months. And so you can see civil engineering, electrical, and fiber communications build out 5, 3, and 3. Now, realistically, those functions are going to overlap as the project commences. You know, as you build a block and you reach final grade, you can start looking into putting the utility infrastructure and things like that. And so by pegging it at an 8-month timeline, we feel that we've given a conservative estimate for the model. And so we've built a little bit of a cushion into the model in case we have construction delays, bad weather, things of that nature. And so by the end of the project, we're looking at 154 million rands, specifically for the direct hard costs of the project.
So, you're engineers, so I assume that's real numbers. It's
Yes,
not
sir,
estimated.
absolutely.
No, not escalate. It's existing current numbers.
Okay.
We didn't escalate, we didn't work in escalation, and we didn't work in escalation in sales prices either.
Correct. And so the next group of assumptions, now we've talked about the direct construction costs or the soft costs, which is the overhead administration of the development company itself. That makes up the remaining 22% of the total cost to build the project, and it includes things such as staff fees for the development company itself, national and municipal fees charged by government agencies, for example, maybe transfer duties charged by SARS, things of that nature. And the major components, like we talked about earlier, we've set aside quite a bit of money for marketing. Things like 3D rendering, 3D models, concept plans for homes, website maintenance, things of that nature. It's imperative that we, yes sir, advertising in general. Obviously we need to capture that sales income, and so we'd be aggressive on that. And then also the sales commission itself would pay at 6% of the total sales coming in. So all in, we're looking at 38 million rands approximately for the soft cost of the project. And before we move into the financial summary itself, the last portion of the assumptions that we need to talk about is the capital stack for the project, or the equity and the debt that's going to finance this development. as far as equity is concerned for the Spier development, we're really only talking about a one-time contribution of land towards the project, and that's going to net a return at the end of the development, according to how the investors want to structure it. When it comes to debt, we anticipate a 45 million rand working capital loan to be necessary just to basically get the ball started. We like to talk about the operating account for the project as the piggy bank. We need to put money in the piggy bank right up front, 45 million rands, in order to finance that first phase of construction so that we can start realizing sales income. And from there, as I said earlier, that sales income will start to finance construction as we pay off the loan. And so at an 8% interest rate for the purpose of this model, the investor, the lender, would earn about 6.5 million rands off of that working capital loan. And it's important to note that the interest being paid on that loan would be separate from and be paid prior to that eventual equity return on the project itself. It's interest on debt. And so this is the schedule that Chad and I have optimized for the payback of that debt, and we'll go into more detail on this later on. But as you can see, in June 2018, once that first phase of construction is completed and we start seeing sales revenue come in, the lender starts to receive 30% of the monthly sales income per month. It's an amortized schedule, so every month they'll receive 30% of the scheduled monthly sales minus sales commission and VAT. And that percentage will increase as that piggy bank allows, as the operating account allows. The one thing that's critical with the development project is that we have to balance the needs of that operating account with the need to pay back that debt as soon as possible. And so we have to give ourselves a little bit of a cash reserve, and we can show you all how we calculated that later on as well, so that we don't have to risk a capital call and have to have more capital injected into the project. All in, September 2020, 33 months later, we believe, from sales beginning, we believe we'll be able to pay off the debt, and we anticipate about 51.5 million rands in order to cover the debt on the project. And so at this point, Chad and I would like to go ahead, hand you all our financial summaries, which is basically the results of our Excel modeling process, and then break these down step by step. Sir?
Yeah, doesn't matter.
Yes, sir. You should have the first and the second page. And as you're looking at those financial summaries, we're gonna walk you through the numbers step by step on the slides here. But please note that all the figures on that financial summary are VAT exclusive. That second page of the handout explains why we calculated that way, and we'd be happy to go into more detail on that towards the end of the presentation if you're interested.
Ready? Okay, so now that you have the financial summary in front of you, I'd like to draw your attention up to the top of the page. The portion you see highlighted in green there represent the cash sources of the project that are going to be used to kind of feed the project and the development. In these cash sources, they consist of the sales income from the 6 phases, as well as that $45 million working capital loan that would be used to initiate the first phase or the first construction phase in that phase A, phase 1A. To the right, you can see 3 columns over there. We broke it down into the budget for the entire project, the total budget, the budget per earth, as well as the budget per square meter. All in all, the cash sources would come to just roughly over 404 million rands at the end.
I wanted them to do that we can control. Most of us have been involved in other developments, and what is the budget, sales budget per earth? What are we selling per earth? What are we selling per square meter? And then it's easy to compare with other stuff as well. You get a gut feeling and get a quick mental calculation, basically, how does it compare?
Can I just ask a question before you continue?
Yes,
Sorry.
ma'am.
The phasing, kind of phase 1A to phase 4, we're not all familiar with what's in that phase. And so I think it's quite important that,
Absolutely.
I mean, we understand it's the big picture. So
Absolutely.
when we look at phase 1A, what is phase 1A again? Rather than just looking at the budget in the month.
We can probably best, maybe after we roll through the financial summary, we can bring these slides back up and we can talk about how we mix the design a little bit.
That's just a summary. We're going into the detail. So you want to add
I know, but I don't know what number of units, how they will work. Just kind of talking through it.
No, it's in there, it's in there.
Okay.
It's coming.
Yeah, we can definitely pull up. We've got a deep dive sheet in our Excel document, which is kind of the background of our entire model, and that goes phase by phase and looks at exactly what type of lot or earth you're providing, what the sizes are, things of that nature. But real quickly before we get to that, looking at the next block of figures in red below the sales income, we start to look at those expenses that we had discussed. You'll note that the cost of land right now is pegged at 0 rands because that is that one-time equity contribution by the investors. And I will discuss, when we talk about the net profit, I'll discuss the implications of having that 0 at this point, or at that point. But looking below that, you'll see a detailed breakdown of the hard costs, which go into even more detail in our actual Excel model. But what I'd like to point out is, if you look at the column to the furthest right, you'll see that we've broken down each of those expenses as a percentage of the overall hard costs. And looking at civil engineering, electrical engineering, and fiber and communication, those three portions that we said really drive the timeline for construction, you'll note that they make up about 50% of the overall hard costs. So those are those major factors. And that 50% is right where we would want it based on past projects. So we anticipate those being solid numbers. All in all, once you take the hard costs from the sales income, you're left with a gross profit of approximately 250.5 million rands. And what that means is about 62% of the rands that have been pumped into the project at this point remain in order to pay off the debt, in order to pay off the overhead administration, and also provide a net profit later on.
So just below the hard costs.
Do you want to quickly run through the different headings there?
Oh, yes, sir, absolutely.
Just on the previous, the card in front of them, maybe it's not necessary. But on the left, we've got the costs, and then we've got the different fees. We've got for cost for civil engineering, electrical, fiber, perimeter fencing, common buildings, gatehouses, pumps, substations, refuge, clubhouses. Then we made an assumption, 3 shower houses. We will build 3 shower houses to show. So there's just an assumption, there's all assumptions. Landscape and irrigation, then the cost, then the fee, civil engineer, clerk of works, electrical engineer, fiber and communication specialist, project management, quantity surveyor, health and safety, geotechnical, fire engineer, building control officer, environmental control officer, architecture, urban design, town planning, project coordination, design review panel, and marketing and research.
And as you'll see, as Dr. Mulder alluded to earlier, there's a specific planning factor that we use as CMAI for each one of those headings and each one of those specialists. For example, the project management and quantity surveyor you'll see is right at 3% of the total hard cost. It's just right below where we wanted it, 3%. And so, we've run through and looked at the hard bids, and they line up with our past projects that have been successful.
Right. Just a question. So if I understand this schedule correctly, just the red stuff here, the cost.
Right.
Is it 350,000 rands per ad?
Correct. On
So
average.
that's the hard cost.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, what's the size of these things per square meter, more or less?
They vary.
Suppose I can work it out here.
Yeah, they vary. You will see it. It's on the.
So they're different.
Yeah, they're different.
On
But
average.
that's an average.
Okay.
There you will see that we've got a price for every stand.
Oh, okay.
It's coming.
Absolutely. We'll go through that with the same deep dive sheet actually.
All
Make
right.
sure to
I
go
like
right
to
over that.
deep dive, we can dive deep into the background.
So now if you look just below those hard costs, you can see the soft costs that were needed to be accounted for the Spier development. These are those overhead administrative costs that Rob spoke earlier about. It's the same breakdown. It goes in detail of each line item, such as the transfer registrations, the bond raising fees, the security, all of those good line items that need to be accounted for. If you look to the left there, you can see the marketing and sales commissioner, again, like Dr. Mulder said, a large portion of this total soft cost. Being that it's sales driven, we want to spend a lot on that marketing and get the word out there so that way sale proceeds come in and fund the project. All in all, you end up just over 38 million for the soft costs, and then if you include that with the hard costs, you come to a direct total cost of development for the development is 192 million rands.
And then the last expense, before we look at that net profit, would be the debt coverage on the project. And that's talking about that $45 million, rand working capital loan that we discussed previously. The two components, scheduled and unscheduled amortization. scheduled amortization is the principal and interest payback on that working capital loan. It's the monthly amortized payments going back to the lender, coming from sales income. The unscheduled amortization, you'll notice, is a positive amount. That's a one-time balloon payment. That's really a quirk of Excel-based financial modeling that just basically allows us to zero out our debt account at the end of the project. It's essentially we've overpaid, and so we take back some of that last month. Wouldn't really happen, but we can get into that further if you'd like to. It's not very interesting, I promise.
David,
But-
I just want to say, like, you're deducting 55 million rand there. What is that? Is that the debt?
That is the debt. That is the 6.5 million rands of interest on top of 45.
But why? So aren't you mixing investment and financing stuff here? Because I mean, this is the profit that you'll make on your top part. Is the profit you'll make, but you don't show the inflow of the debt here. But the inflow show the outflow of the debt. So you're deducting 45 million, but you haven't shown it.
It's
I don't understand how it works.
We've
See
got
what I mean is-
45 million coming in right here as other income.
Oh, is this your debt?
Yes,
going
sir.
up?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, then.
Yeah, and that's on the Excel sheet. It says debt proceeds or proceeds
Now I've got
from
you.
debt. That's
So the
exactly
net
what it
is the interest.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay, I've got you.
And so once you've taken the debt coverage and the hard costs and the soft costs, all the costs of the project from that income, you're left with about 161 million rands for the investors. And this is the portion where I wanted to talk about the cost of the land. Because we peg the cost of land at zero, just for the purposes of this model, you need to consider that when you're looking at that figure. So if the cost of land or the value of the land is say 30 million rands, then that really is 131 million rands of net profit because you have to put that land to use.
We didn't want to get into what's the land value or whatever, so we just left a number at the bottom. We have other projects with the farmers that everything left is my profit, but I pay for the land price tax and stuff, that's stuff that you have to work in internally.
And so at the end of the project, what you can see, you minus the cost of the land, about 40% of the rands that have been pumped into the project have eventually been realized as profit toward the end. And so from our standpoint, we absolutely believe that this development is financially feasible.
Can I ask, I hope I'm not jumping the gun, man, just
No, yes, sir.
again at a very high level. That's for the entire project.
Yes, sir.
So the first obvious question for me is, I mean, if you looked at phasing, how do you account for phasing? In other words, are economies of scale relevant in construction? You know, if you've got people on site,
Absolutely.
you know, you do it block by block and there's no issue. If you just took a simple thing like marketing, for example, you look at phasing, or you just say, I'll take that 7 million and divide it up?
Yes,
We
sir.
take it right now. It's
Because it could-
ideally you would
Because
get-
phasing could change
Yeah.
things.
Ideally, you would have the contractors on site all the time, so you avoid P's and G's and resettlement, going off site, coming back on.
Yeah.
But you know, it's too difficult to split. You can have
Yes.
many theories. on
So,
that.
so yeah, I know you. That's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
So basically, it's just
we will
chopped.
allocate, for instance, 1/6 of the budget, or maybe 1/4 of the budget at the beginning for marketing, and then we will trim down the budget as we get momentum.
Yes.
We might even save on it.
Yes, but that's not how the model works.
No.
The model is quite logical. It says that's
Yeah, we allocated
Dividing it up.
of the budget for
Yes,
certain phases.
There's, for example, if you just wanted to look at civil engineering, we know that a lot of the main civil engineering cost is going to be right up front in that first phase, the main road infrastructure, things of that nature. And so it's heavily weighted towards that first phase, and then it tailors off in
Your
subsequent
first phase will have your access.
No, so you have done.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
You've taken the common
No, we've
sense
taken-
approach and said this is how it's likely to work.
For marketing-
Over all 6 phases.
Yes, sir.
So can I just check what you've just said? So over all 6 phases, you're saying the major cost for all 6 for that specific example would be upfront,
For this,
or for phase
would you
1?
like to answer, sir?
No, I think for the first phase, you have to have security, you have to have a road, so the first phase is loaded in terms of marketing and civil costs for the first phase. But then we broke out the other phases to the exact cost, but the first phase is definitely loaded up front.
Understand.
Yes.
So I mean, so you're saying there's a civil engineering cost here of 53, the majority of that will be spent in the first phase?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Exactly.
But I just think it's relevant because
No,
if after phase 1 you said, stop, do you make money?
Right. And so with financial modeling in general, and with the realities of this project,
Yeah.
this is really made to kind of provide you a bellwether for at any given point. What you'll do really is you'll take these workbooks in Excel,
Yep.
you make another set of them, and then you track the performance of the project over time.
Okay.
And so there is risk in going in and putting all the infrastructure up front. If the market does subside, there is that risk, absolutely.
The other thing is you won't start expending capital unless you have sales.
Exactly.
You have to have, pre-sales first, get bankable pre-sales before you commit.
But I understand, 'cause I'm just trying to get
Yeah.
an idea in my head of what the upfront risk is.
Okay, we'll get.
Because you're loading up front in some cases.
Yes, that's also
The model, there's the full model. You see the tabs, there's budget assumptions, then we've got budget sales proceeds, then we've got the budget debt schedule, we've got the budget cash flow, and we've got the deep dive. All the stuff that you wanna go and look for sits in the deep dive.
Chris, in that deep dive, are there models for each phase? Like, to Andrew's point? Because I'm just looking at just phase one, just knowing the farm. That phase one is definitely not it's definitely a low income phase.
So we just, for the model, we have to take assumptions on the phases, so we can
Okay.
reschedule the phases.
Okay.
Absolutely.
No, on the phases,
So the
we
phases,
really,
I mean, those aren't, you haven't thought about why that is phase one and why that's phase
no,
two?
we really had to sit and down with, because they asked us, what are the phases?